Thanks very much for for everybody that's here today. It's a difficult day for myself. My father. It's a day of reflection for myself as I think about my father, who started his professional career in 1946, and the McNabs have been in hockey ever since then. I've tried to live up to the legacy that he started, and on behalf of my family, my daughters, my wife, I have so many people I would like to thank, but I'm just going to say thank you.
Thank you, David. Questions? If we can start by using the hands raised feature. Let's go to Brian Hayward. Hazy.
David, congratulations. We're gonna miss you around here, and I certainly appreciate all the help you've given me over the years. When I needed an explanation of what was going on and exactly how the league worked, and I don't know anyone who's had your knowledge of the behind the scenes and the CBA, and it's I just want to say you've been a tremendous help to me. The obvious question is, what's next for you? You don't strike me as a guy that's going to play golf for the next few months.
I really don't know. It's actually been 2 years ago. I went to Bob Murray and I told him that I wanted to retire after the 2021 season. So I've had a lot of time to plan this moment, though it still comes upon me, and I realize I will probably try to maybe watch hockey. There's a lot of people I haven't seen a lot of over the years, even though I've traveled. I spend most of my time worrying about our franchise. And so I don't know. I think I just want to take time with my family and just and sit back and reflect on everything that's happened over the past over the past 43 years.
Is there one element of all the jobs that you've done, because you've served in a variety of different capacities for even within the Ducks organization, but is there one part of the job that you found the most satisfying, and maybe you could expand on a story that surrounds that part of the job?
It's the same thing. I think anybody who starts in scouting will always think about the scouting part of the business. I've loved that part. I've loved every part of the game. You got to understand that hockey's been my life every day. My father, as I said, was in hockey every day of my life when I was growing up. I went from playing college hockey at Wisconsin to turning professional with the Washington Capitals 3 months later. So it's not been any time when I haven't done anything that hasn't revolved around hockey. And I started scouting then. I think I've always believed in the lesser known players. And I've always thought there were so many hockey players out there that needed an opportunity, needed a chance to play. I guess you would, the very first player that I could talk about would be Dave Tippett. And he was the first player that I ever chased when I was working for the Hartford Whalers. And he was a free agent playing at the University of North Dakota in the Canadian Olympic team. And I talked to him and watched him and pursued him for 2 years until we ended up signing him the week before the Canadian, before the 1984 Winter Olympics. And Dave has been someone who I've admired and respected and followed all these years. He's still perhaps the most competitive human being that I've ever known. I've often told people that following him and watching him and learning from him taught me a lot for future endeavors in this game. I learned that my dad always told me to watch and talk to all the players and and that character was the most important thing. But I think that anyone who knows Dave knows that his character is off the charts, and I owe a lot to him for any successes that I might have had, because he taught me that integrity and hard work, and you could be 5'9" and you could be not this or that, but you just competed. And so I would start with him, and I would move on then from there.
Thanks, Dave.
Eric Stevens.
David, I want to echo what Brian said. Just want to thank you for your assistance over the years with, like you said, with a lot of the knowledge of different things that I certainly didn't understand and needed someone to help me understand. So I appreciate that. My question to you is, was there a guiding principle, words or whatsoever that your dad gave you that you've sort of applied to not only your jobs that you've done, but even in your life, whether it's your dad or your brother or any of your other family members? Are there any guiding principles that you've kind of leaned on?
Yeah, it's always been the same thing. I have always believed in character of the people. I've always believed that if you associate yourself with good individuals, that you'll have success. I try to. My dad told me really early, as I said before, talk to everyone. Talk to all the players, because when you get to know the players, it'll make your decision making so much easier, because if you get a great human being and put that person in the locker room, you're going to have success. And I've often said that in 2007, that team that we had, if you walk in the room, the people that we had, it's not so much the players, which were a lot of stars, but there's so many terrific human beings in that room, and people that the honorable and the character. The other day, Teemu Selanne, I mean, again, who's just off the charts class. Before my last home game against Los Angeles, I guess 2 weeks ago, I got a text from Teemu Selanne. It was long, it was heartfelt, it was personal, and he just had some great things to say. Thanked me for things of parts of his career. And as I said, I was not expecting it. It came right out of left field for me, but that's the type of person he is. And as I said, when we brought Chris and Andy here, Chris Kunitz, Andy McDonald, who I've often said, after we won the Cup in 2007, I was asked if there was anyone that I was happiest for. And I told them it was those two, because they picked this franchise and they believed what I had said when they came here. But when I met those two, it wasn't difficult to tell that they were great players, but it was even easier to tell what the type of people that they were. And that's been my whole focus in my life, is that you talk to somebody, you analyze who they are, and if you can get those great individuals, you're always going to be farther ahead.
Hacksaw, go ahead.
David, your hometown sends regards. Congratulations on a marvelous career. Hey, I got a couple of historical questions for you. The game has changed so drastically over the decades. When you reflect back, first the Russians came, then the Scandinavians came. Now it's Europeans from everywhere, and a tremendous influx of the kids from the NCAA ranks. Maybe this is the best era of college hockey we've ever seen. How unique is it to be able to go pick out the right players, considering there's so many more players now, David, that you got to look at?
Well, the best players always come to the forefront. I think that's the same in all businesses. And I think, sometimes people might say, how has the game changed over the all these years? And it's, the players are better. The players are bigger and they're faster and they're stronger and they're better conditioned. I'm not going to say that they're more dedicated now than they were in the 70s or the 80s. They're just better athletes. And I think it's in some cases it's a lot of just through hard work. You see the players and as I said, I think when you get to know the players, you realize who the skill level, and sometimes it's just hard work. And you realize the players that absolutely want it. It's interesting when you watch some guys that are great hockey players, but then there's those great hockey players that really are just driven by the game. And I think if you find the players that are driven by the game, it's not as hard as you might think.
A follow-up question. You have seen great players, obviously, like Timo and what Paul Kariya became. When you look at the first-round draft picks that we had here that are up there now, do you see comparisons with Zegras and Jamie Drysdale for greatness at such a young age? Are their young skills equal to what Kariya and Solani were when they were so young? That's one of those questions that's difficult or unfair a little bit for myself to try to do that. When you follow a draft, it's interesting when somebody says, what player do they remind you of? They always remind everybody of superstars. And there's a lot of great hockey players that we would be happy with if Trevor Zegras turns out to be. I mean, obviously, when you say Trevor Zegras has a chance to be really good. I think that to put him in a category of Paul Kariya, who I still think might be one of the absolute greatest hockey players. If it wasn't for Paul Kariya's injuries, he might have been the word generational hockey player. Sometimes is overused, but Paul Kariya was absolutely spectacular. And it's unfair and too bad that he got injured the way he did. So trying to put Trevor into that situation, I think it's unfair. It's unfair to Trevor. He's the way I would say is that Trevor Zegras is the one and only Trevor Zegras. And if he turns out to be as good as he could be, I think the one thing I like about Trevor is that he's and again, I belabor this subject, but I watched him in this last road trip, and we were in St. Louis, and he saw a fan about 60 rows up in the stands, had a Ducks jersey on, and he made sure he threw a puck to him. It was a long throw, but he picked him out and he put the puck in the air and he threw it to him. And the next game in Minneapolis, it was the same thing. He found the Ducks fans in the stands, and there wasn't any fanfare. He wasn't looking to get credit for doing it, but he does things like that. He talks to everybody. He says thank you to the people in hotels. I mean, little things that seem irrelevant, but for a kid that's gotten all this publicity, and Jamie Drysdale is another. He's just a tremendous individual. I think that the two of them have a chance to be really good because they're not caught up in the with all the publicity that they've received. They're very level-headed, and I think that's will set them apart from others. And one final question for me. Those of us in the media who are part of this, we're outside the circle. How hard is it to be inside the circle, to you, Bob, Dallas, just the whole administration?
It's not as hard as you think, because it's fun, and I think that's what you grow up wanting to be. You want to be involved in decisions, and I think that if you're a competitive human being and you've been around as like I have, it's these are the things that it's challenging. it's obviously when things aren't going well, it's not as much fun as it is when things are going well. But I think that's the challenge when that we have here and everybody has in sports is to try to get better every day and try to do something that'll help your team win. But it's great. I mean, you like it because I think I know I will miss that when I'm on the outside.
Thanks for all you've done on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, going in order, we have Ryan Kennedy. Ryan, go ahead.
Thanks. David, just curious, when you look back on your professional career at this point, what sort of evolution have you seen in the scouting world, just in terms of what the job entails and how scouts go about their business?
It's harder now, and the people work harder. I'll tell you, the scouts in the National Hockey League and all sports don't get the credit they deserve. The teams that are successful are the teams that scout really well. And you can probably, when you look at a team that wins the Stanley Cup, you don't fall into a Stanley Cup. You have to have made a lot of smart decisions, and you have to have scouted really well for a long time. And you can probably go back 5, 6, 7, 8 years and found late round guys that will have made it. And these guys that are out there now, they're gone 2-3 weeks at a time, and there's teams everywhere. Like when I started, there were a lot of junior teams and a lot of college teams, but there were sort of pockets of places. Now there's hockey players everywhere, and the teams are all over the place that you have to see. There's so many more teams in the United States in different junior leagues, so many more places in Canada, so many more places in Europe. So I don't know how they do it now. I'll tell you, the dedication and the work ethic and the desire to do things with very little publicity and very little fanfare. But it's a challenge. It's a challenging business. And I give the scouts today tremendous kudos because it's hard. And I think that's the difference between, there was a time in which you could sort of say, oh, team X, Y, and Z didn't work hard. Everybody works hard now. Everybody has a quality organization. Sometimes things don't go well, and you may struggle for a while, but everyone in the National Hockey League works. This is a league of great franchises, and great organizations and hardworking people. And that's probably the part of the game that I admire the most. Is it's an honor to be in a league of 32 now, great franchises.
Excellent. And just a quick follow-up. Who would have won in the game between your Wisconsin Badgers and Paul Kariya's Maine Black Bears?
That's not even a question. So Wisconsin would have won that in
Awesome, thanks.
5-1. Paul would have scored when it was 5-0.
Thank you.
Tiford, go ahead.
Hi, David. Congratulations and thanks for all the help down the years. I wanted to clarify a couple of things, make sure I got the stories right. Max was the GM in San Diego and Peter was the mascot for a time, or were you the mascot? I forgot.
No, Peter was the mascot. He's the highest scoring mascot in the history of pro sports. Yes, he was the he was the when the Gulf started in '66. And my dad was the GM and coach at the time, and Peter led the team on the ice. He had the big duck's head, or gull's head, I mean, and he just skated one time around the ice and came off, but he was the quote unquote mascot for the first 2 seasons in San Diego.
How old was he then?
He was 14.
14. Okay.
Yeah.
And were you jealous of it?
No, it was heavy. It was like 50 pounds. It was like the first, I think it was the first head of that kind. I mean, usually they just had mascots where they didn't have anything, no head on them, or just skated around. But Peter it was a very unique gull's head. He could operate the beak with his gloves, and the eyes would blink, and but he had to be a good skater because it was so heavy on him.
Right, right. And the other question is slightly more serious. What's your kind of view of where things are headed with the organization? You got in on the ground floor, you've seen pretty much all of it. Where's it going now, and are you optimistic?
Yeah, I'm optimistic because I don't think we're as far away as everybody would assume. I think there's a lot of players in the room that I think collectively would say they didn't have a great year, but they want to be here, and they want to play well. And I mean guys that sometimes if you have players who haven't had success in the NHL, they all want to get better, and they all want to do well. But we got guys who have done well in the NHL, whether it be Cam Fowler, Hampus Lindholm, Jacob Silverberg, Ricard Raquel, Adam Henrique. Guys like that have done well in this league, and have done well in Anaheim. And most of them are involved in our teams in 15 and 17 when we were right there to win it. And so they know that this wasn't a year that they're happy with, but they're really quality individuals that want to succeed, and they want to succeed here. And I think that I with the young guys coming up, if all of a sudden next year we stay healthy, and some of these guys have big years, which they've done before. It's not asking a lot for some of these guys to have a great year. You could flip it around in a real hurry. So I'm not as concerned as a lot of people are, because I know what the character in that locker room is there. And I think that sometimes it'll be one or two guys, and if we can get a young guy who can really have a breakout season, I think we'll be fine.
Last thing for me, will you still be involved with the draft? Alex said you weren't leaving until June 30th. Is that correct?
I'm gonna leave till June 30th, but as far as, I mean, I'll always be available now or forever as in a consulting sort of a way. But I think the draft is I won't be involved in the draft, because that's not till end of July.
Right.
So I think at that point they'll have moved on, but as I said, I'll always be available. When you're somewhere for 28 years, it isn't like it just all of a sudden you just leave. The passion for the sport or this franchise. And so if they ever need a question, I'll obviously be very interested in helping.
Thanks again, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dan Wood, go ahead.
David, congratulations, number one, and I sincerely mean that. I also want to thank you for all the help you've given me over the years. You know you're going to miss these questions from people like me and Hazy and Eric and Elliot. It's going to drive you crazy not having us bugging you left and right. But on a serious note, with your background in San Diego, you're well aware of the landscape of hockey in California and Southern California going back decades. You came here in 1993, and with what you've witnessed in the growth of hockey with the NHL teams, the American League teams, the youth leagues, the kids coming out of Southern California and even Northern California getting to the NHL, does that bring some satisfaction to you to know that you and the Ducks played a prominent role in that?
Absolutely. I've always known there's always been great hockey players in Southern California. I think that there was a time in which everybody left so early in their life that they, and even now, or maybe 20 years ago, people would maybe at 14 or 15, they would leave, and California never got the credit for it. All of a sudden, they would be drafted from someplace else, and that region would get the credit, and people would sort of look at, yeah, he started in California, but nobody plays hockey in California. But now I think people realize through what this franchise has done and lost the Kings have done, and other teams in California, that people in the country realize that there's a lot of terrific hockey players in California. And that's a big thrill for myself, who really I consider myself to be from California, because I moved there when I was 10 years old, and I was there through the end of high school. And then I came back, obviously, moved here in '96. So I've been here most of my life. And it's a thrill to see the development of hockey, the hockey fans, the young players, and every year there are guys being drafted from this area.
Thanks, David, and congratulations again.
Thanks, Dan.
Eric Stevens.
Hey, David, I just got a couple more real quick. You were obviously a central piece of this franchise, and you did so much of the behind the scenes grunt work in so many capacities for this organization. And you've never seemed to have wanted to ever take any credit, for it, or have any attention really directed in your direction there. I'm just curious, was that just always something that you just really preferred to be, just to be that behind the scenes guy, to do your work, kind of away from the fray?
Well, I think that when you work for people like I have, there's always been somebody in charge. You should do that. I think that organizations run better when people do their jobs, and they sort of don't try to distract or take credit for something that they might do, because it should be about the organization. My father, again, I go back to my dad. My whole life, pretty well everything revolves around things I learned from him. But he had a poem that he used to have in his office when he was in San Diego and then in Washington and New Jersey. It was a poem called "Loyalty" by Elbert Hubbard. And his whole life was based on that. And that's the thing he instilled into me, was loyalty. And that the people you work for, you honor those people, and that you believe in those people, and that the franchise was everything. Everybody, I will come and go, and other people will come and go, but the franchise will always be here. And that if you do everything that you can for the franchise and not for your own credit, that the franchise will be successful. And so I think that my dad was in such a way that he never, he did so many things well and never took the credit. People laugh at me when I say, well, why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? Well, wow, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, but my dad started hockey in Southern California, or as a key part in Southern California. And he brought a franchise that was in Washington, that was terrible in Washington. And he brought it to respectability, and he took a terrible team in New Jersey and brought it to respectability. He always seemed to not be there when the glory was there, but that was fine. And I think that I've had an unbelievable privilege to be in this franchise for 28 years. I haven't looked for the publicity, and I haven't interviewed a lot of places. So people might say, well, you failed because you haven't been a general manager. I decided a long time ago that if I was here and we won the Stanley Cup, which was, obviously the honor of what everybody shoots for. But then I also decided that I'd rather have stayed here so my daughters didn't have to move than to pursue a GM job somewhere else. And I've always thought that loyalty went both ways. This franchise has been loyal to me, and that I would be loyal back, and I wouldn't pursue something else. So I don't regret not trying to get my thrill is getting to know some of the players that have been here. You know, it's a silly thing to talk about. And I talked a little bit about Andy and Chris, who are heroes are supposed to be older than you, but they don't have to be. And some of my heroes in life are players that I've gotten to know, and it's players that I've gotten to know because I've been here a long time. And I know that, you know, like I talked about Dave Tippett, and I talked about Andy McDonald and Chris Kunitz, and those are my heroes. And if I had gone elsewhere, or if I had been a different type of person, maybe they wouldn't have come here, or maybe they wouldn't. I'm happy with the way things have been, and I would never have done something different.
I appreciate, by the way, I remember you told me when we kind of discussed your career a few years ago, we had a nice lengthy conversation, and you told me a lot about that. So I appreciate that. Almost want to end it on this point, but I did want to ask you one organizational kind of themed question. Like you mentioned, those college free agents that were very impactful that you were able to sign for this organization. That's an area where you guys haven't done a whole lot of in recent years. Is that just reflective of sort of an organizational shift in mindset at all, or is it just that much more competitive atmosphere, you know, in recent years?
It's definitely more competitive. I've often said that game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2007 got a lot of people a job, because that was the game in which Andy got 2 and Penner got the winner, and we that sort of guaranteed us that we were going to win the Stanley Cup. And all of a sudden, everybody said, "My God, they have 2 college free agents that scored all 3 goals," and everybody around the league went out and signed people. It's harder now, but we haven't done as good a job in that regard. I'm not going to sugarcoat that part. We got hot for a while, and then there have been other players we've tried to sign that have signed elsewhere. And so, as I said, we've tried just as hard, but I do think that there was a time in which the players were allowed to get older. Chris Kunitz once told me that I said, if you were in today's game, you would have got pursued as a freshman. And back when he played, he got signed as a senior, and that when he was more ready for the NHL. But now the players are pushed and tugged at so early. So we've tried, but we haven't succeeded, and for that I'm disappointed.
I think we got one more from Hacksaw.
What would Max McNab say about David McNab's career in hockey?
I think he'd be proud of the way it worked. I think I'm retiring at the right time. I don't think I should hang on. I'm not saying I would, if I was working next year, would hang on, but I think that my dad didn't get to the NHL as quick as he should have. He obviously was qualified in San Diego all those years, but he waited until we were out of high school. And I've always thought that it was not necessary for me to go farther than I have, because, as I said, my daughters have started and ended in the same school system, which I know is unique in this sport. And I would rather do that, have done that than try to interview a whole bunch of places and maybe get one, which I was comfortable and confident that I could have, but it still wouldn't have been the same because when like in 90, when I left New York and came here, they won the Stanley Cup the following year. And people always said, boy, you must have wished you had stayed there because you could have won the Stanley Cup. I never really felt a part of it there because I scouted, and even though I had a role and we drafted some pretty good players. Doug Waite was drafted out of there, and when I was there, but it was when we won it here, I had a big part of it here. And if I guess if I was going to be on the Stanley Cup, it would be my career should be that my name's on with Anaheim.